Welcome back to The Crunch. So, coming up on the show, and I was so relaxed that Dan came out, the producer, my ex-boss, and he came out and he went, "You can do many things in life, but you can't zoom a vinyasa."
It's so relatable. Changing gears quickly. Up the gears.
You drive
quickly.
like a crazy person. Can I say that? It's not very.
Vin Diesel.
I don't like it. It's not nice.
This is my biggest bugbear as someone who works with clients is unsolicited advice or feedback.
Is that I sometimes worry that I'm going to get interrupted. So I speak really quickly and leave no gaps between my sentences, and I can go on, and then I have the next story, another story for you. Give me a second. I'll just go into another story, because if you leave a gap.
Now one here, one bid, one let me get a bid upon one, now two here, two. I can't stop brushing. It sounds like I can't stop brushing.
I can't stop brushing. I can't, because you got to get that the plosive P. I can't stop rushing.
Rushing.
I can't stop rushing.
Yeah.
It sounds all.
That's hard.
But yeah, I can't stop rushing. I will hold my hands up and say, I think this.
Are you a rusher?
Is my biggest qualm with the public speaking realm.
What, this is your personal challenge? This is your biggest personal challenge, or this is what you dislike the most when you watch someone speak?
This is the thing that I have found the most challenging.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I mean, there's loads of other things like, initially things like slight bit of imposter syndrome, and wanting to be really good, or I have had some in the past, some insecurity about my Welsh language ability.
Yes, okay.
But rushing and going too quick is something that I still have to keep checking in with myself. Absolutely.
When in the moment, when do you notice I'm going too quick? I'm rushing. When do you pick up on it?
Unfortunately, it's when I look back at stuff.
Oh, okay.
In the moment, it's quite hard to know.
To pinpoint.
So either someone says to me, "Luke, let's slow it down a bit," or I look back at it and I go, "I'm going too quick. I'm rushing." And that is unfortunately when I'm doing it. Although I do use, and we'll talk about this in a bit, I do use some techniques to like remind myself to slow it down. But I think it's important to realise where that comes from. But in the moment when I'm doing it, the feeling probably is, I don't know how deep this goes if I'm being honest, but it's probably I need to, because when I first started doing TV stuff, everything was timed, and you had to get everything in a very, very, very short space of bite-sized time. And also things like when you're doing live stuff, in my mind, you've got to convey this information as quick as possible. So I'm just trying to get it done, really. It's not necessarily I want to get it over with. It's more of I need to get this to you as quick as possible before you get bored. Because I've interviewed a lot of people, and some people really take their time, and I'm thinking about the edit, and I'm thinking about how am I going to fit this in. So I think when I speak, they're thinking the same thing. So maybe it's a bit of a people-pleasy thing. It's I want to be fair to you and get you the information as quick as I can to make your job easier and for you to like me more.
Oh, wow.
Maybe it's down to that.
So it's I want to give the information to you as quickly as possible so that I don't waste your time.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to waste your time. And then also you said something about, or it could be, I want to get this over with. So they're the two kind of angles. Is that right? Like that's not necessarily for you, but I mean, do they kind of fall into those two categories? Do you think?
I'd say so. For me, I wouldn't say it's let's get this over with. Maybe when I first started doing it, maybe. I reckon that a lot of people have that though. I wouldn't say that's my thing. Mine is probably more of I don't want to have them waiting for the thing. I want them to feel as comfortable as possible.
To get the time that they get that value in is the comfort.
I think so. I mean, just like have a look at if you look at my TikTok or Instagram videos where I talk a lot about history stuff, they're quite quick and fast and furious. I like to give people value for time.
5 things you need to know about.
Yeah, like value for time.
There's no fat on the meat.
No fat on the meat.
Yeah.
Slim, trim. Like value for money, but value for attention, a value for time. And I find in Welsh, I'm sometimes worse.
In terms of that efficiency?
In terms of rushing.
Oh, okay. So you rush a lot in Welsh?
I rush more in Welsh.
And why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think maybe in school I wasn't very good at Welsh, so I wanted to get it all over with.
Yes.
So maybe it ties into that.
Oh, so that's where you're in that camp?
Yes.
Okay.
I remember my first job I did with S.O.S, and I was doing social media videos for the Eisteddfod in Cardiff. And I was interviewing people, and I was my Welsh was quite mumbly. This was back in 2017, 18 maybe. My Welsh was quite mumbly, quite quick. And I was looking at them back and I'm going, I don't know what I'm saying. And if I can't understand what I'm saying, how on earth are people watching or listening going to know what I'm saying?
That feels like to me something that I used to do in school because my spelling was so bad. I thought that if my writing was just terrible. This is apparently a thing.
Yeah.
It's called masking.
I used to do that all the time.
So you just link it up.
I always did that.
Like it could be a U, it could be an O.
Oh my
whatever.
God.
Yeah, whatever the spelling is, right, Miss or Mister. What does your eyes see?
That is insane.
Yeah, so I think the same thing, because I remember hearing you speak Welsh and picking up the same thing, saying, actually you're very clear when you speak English. When you spoke Welsh, you're doing a little tongue warm up now, aren't you? Just to make sure. I found I was saying like you're kind of rattling through, like you just want to get it over with, or you're joining up those letters, like masking. Because if you mumble, again, people can just kind of assume they've heard, they connect the dots then, isn't it? To be saying something like, yeah, I was really feeling blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they kind of go, oh, I'm just going to hear what I want to hear then, because I'll say my bit now. And that's what you're kind of hoping, isn't it?
Especially if it's live. I find I rushed more when it was live. When pre-recorded, I knew I had the I had the mercy of the edit, so I can cut stuff out. In live, it's like, right, you've got a minute to get this stuff in. I didn't do loads of live when I first started off. I did a job quite recently, actually, where I went up to Birmingham in the NEC when I was, I think I spoke about this before, where I was comparing bin lorries. And I had to like big up the bin lorry and say who was driving it and all this kind of stuff.
Was it like demonstrations of bin lorries? So
yeah,
they were you could buy the new bin 3000.
It was, what was his name? There's a I think his name was Klaus, and he was a German dude, and he was driving this I think it was a snow sweeper.
So today we have Klaus.
It was
in
like
a snow sweeper 3000.
Yeah, it was that.
That's fantastic.
Next up we got Klaus, and he's in the Micromanager Snow Sweepy 5000, and look at that turning circle, like all this kind of stuff. Yeah?
And it beep beep.
Yeah.
Beep.
Yeah. And there's loads of people there who were invested in buying these bits of kit.
Yeah, they wanted to see those Klaus twill.
And Klaus would do, and the guy who was explaining then, because then you'd have someone who's an expert talk about it in depth. And this was Klaus's sidekick, and Klaus would like drift round, and every time he came round,
Tom Cruise
would make eye contact with the speaker, and he'd be like, and I could just see Klaus going on like doing like, don't like in Tokyo Drift, they like pull the handbrake and spin.
Yeah.
Klaus would do like a version of that, but like make eye contact.
Brilliant.
What's my point? My point was I was doing this gig, and there was a guy there who was doing the sound desk for it and doing all the mixing and all that in his little truck, and his name was Ronnie. And he used to do radio, so his name was Ronnie Radio. Am I boring you?
No, sorry.
That's okay.
Relaxing.
I'm joking, that's fine. And I did the first bit to, piece or whatever, and he said, he's from Birmingham. I'm going to butcher his accent, I'm so sorry. I know.
Brace yourselves.
I'm not going to do it now because I'm scared about doing it. How do you speak? No, he's from up north. You're not on radio now, love. You can slow down a tad. It was something like that. He said, hey, mate, you're okay. And also he said, you're from Wales. You're in the NEC in Birmingham. Like the accent thing.
Yes, absolutely.
You need to be more aware of that.
They need to just tune into you, right? Like just help them listen to you. So there's something that I wanted to come back to that you said in the very beginning of like, I don't want to waste your time. I want you to get as much value as possible. Now, if they cannot hear you because you're rushing, all of that intention gets squandered then, doesn't it? Because they cannot hear you. So I know that you want to be time efficient, but actually they need to know what you're saying. And when you're rushing, you are more prone to mumble or trip over your words, stumble, feel a little bit out of your depth. And that just kind of goes on a little merry-go-round, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think another thing which doesn't help is that, and I think you've pointed this out to me, is that I can be sometimes lazy with my mouth. So before I do...
Sometimes I can be lazy with my mouth.
But no, my mouth doesn't move. I know, but
it is a very good double entendre.
It is a bit, isn't it? And I always try and do exercises before I do anything now. I try my best anyway. And the least I can do is like this, like...
Cleaning your teeth with your tongue.
But there's so many things you can do.
All of these warm-ups are very attractive.
But you've got to do that. You can't just speak quickly, because sometimes you have to speak quickly, by the way. Say if you need, like if you're doing, this is another good example. I had to do voiceover once for an advert, and I didn't know the call to action at the end, or the T's and C's. So it would be something like, Speaker S.O.S podcast, now available on Spotify. And that call to action.
Just so you know, these
exactly. You got to do that bit really quickly. And that in Welsh, oh my gosh.
That's hard.
And that bit, and it's not a case of you can slow down it. We need this whole sentence in 1.5 seconds. So you've got to do it quickly. And that's where, when you have to be quick, that's when the exercises really are the most essential thing I could ever imagine.
That's a very unique scenario.
Oh, so
I'd
unique,
say.
By the way, yeah.
But what I would say is a lot of people in panels, presentations, pitches, whatever, there are time constraints. I do think it is important to honour the time of your audience, not to waste their time. So there's a sort of, you need to find yourself in the middle, don't you? Of really honouring everyone's time, but making sure that you're not rushing and tripping over your words, because then you're just inaudible.
Nothing wrong with saying less as well.
Absolutely.
Which sounds like such a simple thing, but Daniel Glynn, the radio presenter and all-round broadcaster, he one of his first tips he ever said to me was, plan out what you're going to say and then say a third less.
Yeah, and it's like Coco Chanel, like take off the last thing you put on, outfit-wise and accessory-wise, not like your dress. Just stuff it. This one's going. It's like those last pair of earrings or the lipstick or whatever. Take off the last thing. Now, I was thinking of like a real-world comparison for this. There's presentations and talks and, you know, panel discussions, or even if you're invited onto a podcast or even social media now has to be certain lengths, right? So we are kind of mindful of time. I was in a networking group where you had to speak for 45 seconds. And this was one of the things that I noticed the most. And I wish they'd done what you just said there of like, say a lot less, because no one is going to take in all of that information. It's like, hello, it reminds me of those cattle auctioneers. I can't even coherently say any of the words. I wish I had a script right here. One of them, maybe two, maybe three. One day I'm going to learn this. It's going to be on my bucket list as a little party trick, like chopsticks. I'm sick with chopsticks.
Should we have a go now?
Okay, can you get a script? Okay, amazing. But that's
whilst I look for this, and no, I'm going to ask you. Okay, never mind.
Luke's going to mansplain, but I carry on.
No, whilst I look for this, I was going to ask, is there a time when you feel, because the time I've known you, you're quite clear and coherent. Were you ever a rusher? Well, I find this.
Was I ever a rusher? I'm now thinking, was I ever a rusher? I think I was, because I used to get too kind of overexcited. Oh, I tell you what I do. Right, so I don't necessarily rush, but I get a lot of very spontaneous, quick thoughts. So it's not necessarily that the content is rushed, but the transition between what I'm talking about it's almost like, what is the film where the dog goes, squirrel?
Despicable Me?
No.
Up.
It's up.
It is up. Thank you, Dan.
Where he goes, squirrel. That's kind of like my thoughts. So I have, when I'm talking to people, I'll be like, yes, thinking about X, Y, Z. Oh, what about? So it changes gears quite abruptly. Luke's probably nodding because that's also the way I drive. Changing gears quickly. Up the gears.
You drive
quickly.
like a crazy person. Can I say that? It's not very...
Vin Diesel.
I don't like it. It's not nice.
Sorry.
It's just really, I phantom brake a lot. Put it that way.
Actually, that's actually a really good metaphor, is think about how you'd like to be driven around. Now, if you're sightseeing, aka this is a really good metaphor. Cool your jets.
If you're sightseeing.
If you're sightseeing, you don't want to be like, there's a wheel there, there's the...
Like the Harry Potter bus.
Yes, you don't want it to be like the Harry Potter bus. You actually want to be taken around the sites. Well, now that we've all got out, taken some pictures, had a little nose, now on to the next thing. Now, I would say in terms of speaker archetypes, that's the educator.
Yeah.
So it's like, let's look at point number 1. We've got this over here, this over here, this. These are the features. Now we've got a good understanding. Chapter 2. And those speakers are people like Gabor Mate, who are saying such dense, incredibly complex stuff. So they take their time. It's a slower rate. So it's really useful to have a slower rate when you're an educator. Now, if you're a motivator, you wouldn't want to go to the Formula One and see them sightseeing. That's like to get to the end, right? To get to the peak of the drama. So it is a little bit quicker. So rate when you're being, a kind of motivator or you want to energize the crowd is quite useful, but it cannot tip into rushing. Because if someone like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like a motivator, motivational speaker or something like Tony Robbins or Oprah, or I'm trying to think of people who, really command the space. Simon Sinek, they are at a higher rate, but they're not losing that clarity by rushing or mumbling.
Absolutely. Or like when gurus speak, or people who are like in that world.
Yeah.
They never rush.
Well, I was thinking about this with yoga teachers.
Okay.
So obviously I did my yoga teacher training, and this was a big lesson. I think this is maybe where all of the lack of rushing has come for me, because you have to embody the words. So you cannot just kind of wildly zoom through a vinyasa. It has to be clear. People have to see you do it. People, you're demonstrating, you're checking in with people, whatever. There's loads of plate spinning. But if you were a yoga teacher being like, and I'm a dog, up a dog, like it'd be chaos. And also people have kind of rushed, to get to your class and whatever. And they're kind of sat on their mat. If you started off with like, right, let's go. You start to have this super harsh rate, they're not going to feel calm. I think the voice is the conduit for how people feel.
Absolutely. I know on a t-shirt that says, you can do many things in life, but you can't zoom a vinyasa.
It's so relatable. Listen, you can't zoom a vinyasa. They always say at your own pace. Do you know what's hilarious, right? This is a complete side note. Loads of yoga teachers say this.
What?
At your own pace, do your vinyasa. But then they all move on. And so you're like, and then they're on to the next thing. You're like, oh gosh, all right, quick. I'm in a pretzel leg. But yeah, that's a good teacher for it. If you want to know how to settle, embody the words, go to a yoga class and actually watch a yoga teacher.
Definitely.
How they speak.
I sometimes find that I take my time physically with stuff. I take ages to do anything, getting out the car, leaving the house, having a shower. Maybe my voice is making up for it. On that note, I've got here an example of, this is a weird example. There was an Irish young man who got out of, was on the way to school and he was freezing, and he said in an Irish accent, "Oh, you'd be better off getting frostbite." Have you seen that one? Mm-hmm. This was years and years and years ago, and he's like a bit of a character. He's almost an 80-year-old guy, but in a guy who was quite young, yeah? And he was the most likeable, lovable kid ever, really fun. Now he's an adult, and now he's doing loads of podcasts and stuff, and he went to America to train as a
cattle
auctioneer. And here he is. I'll write down what he's saying, and then we can have a go at doing it ourselves, okay?
Gosh, I'm getting nervous.
Are you? Okay, I'm at an auction. I want to buy a horse.
Okay.
Bid it to me.
Now one here, one bid, one. Let me get a bid upon one. Now two here, two. Now two here, two bid, two. Oh, it's really hard. bid 2, let me get a bid upon 2. Oh, let me get a bid upon. I feel like once you have those in the placement in your mouth, let me get a bid upon 2, you'd have like it's a little bit singy-songy.
Yeah, okay.
Let me get a bid upon 2 now. 1 here, 1 bid 2. Let me get a bid upon 1. Okay, so one day I'm going to go off and practice it. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I'd love to go.
I'm gonna go off and practice this. I feel like it takes all of your energy to wake up the mouth. Now 1 bid 1.
Ready? Can you be my person who's bidding, right?
Yeah.
Now 1 here, 1 bid 1, let me get a bid upon 1. Now 2 here, 2 bid 1, let me get a bid upon 2. Now 1 here, 1 bid 1, let me get a bid upon 1. Now 2 bid 1, let me get a bid upon 1, 2. Now 1 here, 1 bid 1, let me get a bid upon 1. Now 2 here, 2 bid upon 1, let me get a bid upon 2. Now 1 here, 1 bid 1, let me get a bid upon 1. Now 2 here, 2, let me bid.
That's what it sounds like. Big fish, little fish, cardboard box. Big fish.
Yeah.
Diane, that was very good.
That's hard.
That was really hard. Yeah.
That's really hard.
But again,
we salute you, auctioneers.
They're very clear.
So clear.
Super clear.
Yeah, I love how they sound. They all wear their cool Texas hats. Another thing to add into the mix, why I think people rush sometimes, and this is probably one of the reasons why I rush, and I don't think you do this, by the way, I think I do this, is that I sometimes worry that I'm going to get interrupted. So I speak really quickly and leave no gaps between my sentences, and I can go on, and then I have the next story, another story for you. Give me a second. I'll just go into another story, because if you leave a gap, that gives room to be interrupted, and I really don't like getting interrupted.
Why do you think that is?
Because it makes me feel like, I don't know, unworthy, or I find it quite disrespectful, and I try not to interrupt people. So I feel like I don't interrupt you, please don't interrupt me. You're smiling when I'm saying this. Why?
I don't know that. I think it's really natural to interrupt each other. It's really natural. That is, I think there's a little bit of taboo around it, because we are more and more seeing things more formalized, like scripts and TV and film and whatever, and people don't naturally interrupt, but it is very natural. I think what is difficult is when someone is primed to answer back to you, like they've had a thought and they can't wait to tell you that rather than listen to what you're saying. That's really frustrating.
Yes.
So
or when people... Oh, go on. I did that for effect.
Of course.
But do you know when people do a thing where they go tell a story and they say something like... And I know loads of people do this. I've done this too. But this is probably something that some people maybe don't realise to do sometimes, is where you go, oh, I went to France last week. Oh my God, I went to France with my grandmother last week. Oh, it was unbelievable. And then they say their story, and then you kind of are left in the lurch a little bit.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because that is a sign of, I've forgotten what it's called. It's something like the similarity or the likability effect, or similarity like effect, or...
Let's go with that.
It's something like that, where that's how we know we've built rapport. So we need to have those moments. But you're right, kind of lassoing the conversation and dragging it a different way that's going to plummet your rapport with people. And that actually really does plummet people's rapport. Being a really good listener, asking questions, keeping curious, massively uplifts your rapport with people. So maybe, I don't know. That is a really good point, not wanting to be interrupted. Being the cause of rushing. What about when the cause of rushing is linked to just wanting to get it over with?
I think it's probably running towards the finish line, and you're thinking to yourself, I've just got this bit left, and you kind of almost quantifying it. I remember when I used to do it in when I used to do, I can't think of the English word, like speeches in school. And we used to do speeches, and in my head, I'd be counting down how long I had left of my speech, just to be like, oh, when is this going to be over? So maybe it's just
a lot of people do that, right? They're just like, well, I'll just be up here until the time runs out. Ooh.
Well, yeah, but also at my school, you'd have a lot of people in the front row doing inappropriate signs with their hands. So I'm quite easy to make laugh as well. So that was another motivation. So when you say, what does that feel like? It's probably fear. I want to get off this platform. I can't wait to get out of here. This feels uncomfortable. Let's just get this over with. And I've heard that quite a lot, actually, when I've been to weddings and stuff.
I just want to get this over with.
And the speeches where they go, oh, I just want to get it over with now. And I think out of everything, that's quite a shame, because that moment should be cherished. And I think some of the best things I've done when I've done public speaking, like when I did the TED Talk stuff, where I was speaking about, my relationship with my dad and all that kind of thing, and being a man and masculinity. I like to think that I was very lucky to have that space and I had time to do it, but I really didn't want to rush it. And it was more of, let's not rush this. Let's savor every single word. And if you do that, it helps you connect your words better as well. And when you connect your words better, the message is clearer and the audience feels it in a more powerful way. If it is rushing through your speech and you're not connecting with the words, people aren't going to really work out what you're actually trying to say. And I also think it's quite cool to select your words carefully. I'm not sure if you've seen, whether you like him or dislike him, someone like Elon Musk, when he speaks, he leaves massive pauses between his sentences. Or someone would say, how can we solve the problem of energy in XYZ? And he would go, let me think about that. And he just is silent for like 30 seconds. And then every word he said is really kind of calculated and is so decisive, I guess. But do you think things like, I just did it then, that's where things maybe like filler words come into the whole rushing thing? Or people putting phrases in that they don't really mean, they're just doing it to kind of fill the void?
Yeah, it comes back to that sort of joined up writing again of masking. And I think a filler word is there often. The odd one is fine. It's totally normal to have filler words. Like, to demonize them completely is ridiculous, because like, who speaks that kind of in inverted commas perfectly? But I think we are afraid of pause and we are afraid of slower rate because we think it looks less clever. I think ultimately.
Yeah.
So the filler words are almost like a sort of vamping for time, isn't it? And we're hoping that the brain will just get something out the filing cabinet to deliver it just on time, and just sort of like filling time until we say something good, which is really interesting. I was actually one of the judges this weekend on the Rotary Club's Youth Speaks competition. And when the young people were asked a question, it was interesting which ones did what you just said, kind of filled and just hoped that something would come to them in the moment. And it did. But of course, there's more gravitas in the young people who are stopping and considering what they want to say. And I think that is such a strong point. If you can slow everything down. Now, a lot of people, this is one of the things actually that I want to talk about. That was a squirrel thought. A lot of people say stop rushing. And this is a bit of a bugbear of mine. They say stop rushing, or like, you should just slow down. Now, if you are going to give that advice to people, you need to know how to help them. This is my biggest bugbear as someone who works with clients, is unsolicited advice or feedback. And I sort of made this comparison to you earlier that, like, it's a bit like someone being like, oh, I wouldn't have done it like that. Or, oh, I wouldn't have worn that. And they're like, well, what would you wear? And they're like, don't know, just not that. It's like, it's not useful unless you can help them. I think rushing is one of the ones where people are just like, just slow down a bit.
It's like, but what I'm trying to get, okay, a question then, coming back to that, why is it not just as simple a thing as just slowing down? Why is it more than that?
Because for a lot of people, slowing down isn't something active. And if you're doing something very active like rushing, you're just having to pull that back, and that's it. So you have to do something that is coming the other way, that's head on to that rushing, or to give you something else to do to help you slow your voice down.
Right.
So you've said before about your dad's watch, reminding you, keep cool, ground yourself, take your time. Or I know that you've said before, you've literally written on your hand slow.
Yeah.
Even seeing that as a visual trigger, that's fine. But there's something associated with that you do that isn't just like, oh yeah, I must remember. You probably slow your breathing down.
Oh, everything changes.
There we go. So there's something physiological helping you. It's not just think, slow down. But if you don't know how to do that, if you don't have access to breathing techniques, relaxation techniques, yoga, mindfulness, whatever, something that gives you a means of slowing down, how will you ever know how to do that?
Yes, exactly. The breath thing is important. Yeah, so I have written on my wrist slow, because that was the biggest note my dad ever gave me was, Luke, you need to slow down. Or Luke, just slow down a bit. He always used to tell me that. So I wear the watch as like a grounding tool as well sometimes, and it reminds me to just go, like, have a bit of a moment. And also the slow thing. But it's not just about slowing my pace down. It's just about also enjoying it. My dad also used to say, just enjoy it.
The savouring was the word I picked up from you. I think that's such a good word. Savour this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, imagine eating a meal like a sort of hungry Labrador. Like, you're not going to taste your food.
Exactly.
But actually, if you savour it. But that's what I mean. Is like, actually, you're saying that one of your biggest challenges is rushing.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you haven't done much to do with relaxation techniques.
No.
To do with breath work. And if we were working together on that particular problem or challenge, I should say, we would be looking into those techniques.
Yes.
We would be looking at, okay, why is this coming up? How can we develop the muscle memory for you to relax, for you to center yourself? Catherine Goyder says something really beautiful. Imagine that you're breathing through your feet. And even that's a mindful technique of thinking that your nostrils are at your feet. You're now just relocating where that breath is coming into. And so you're deepening the connection with the lower, it's like when you go to the gym and you suddenly feel like, oh yeah, I'm in my body. That normally happens when we're rushing, we're in our heads, we're up here and everything becomes fast. The breathing becomes really high. You need to learn how to get everything low and slow. Not so that you become super slow, but that you can stay in command. You can flip that switch. There's some sort of means. So that's what I mean is a lot of people say, just slow down. And yeah, you can mentally do that. But if you don't have the means, you don't have the alternate force to slowing down, you can always be stuck there.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's true. You said about the whole kind of savouring the words. That's something I noticed Geraint Hardy, so he's my presenting agent. He always, whenever like we talk about something and we talk through, I don't know, the technicalities of what I've got to do or what time I've got to be there or whatever, he always says, but other than all that, enjoy it. Enjoy it. And I think enjoying it is maybe a key to slowing down. I don't think I've mentioned this to you before, actually, and it kind of ties into that sounding boring or monotone. When I first did live telly, like on a local TV station on like a sofa, it was a bit like Wayne's World. It was really fun, but it was live telly, and that's still quite scary. Even if there's like 10 people watching or thousands of people watching, it doesn't matter. It's live telly. It's still scary. So the first time I did a show, I was really like quite rushy and quite quick and quite let's get this over with y kind of vibe slightly. And then the more comfortable I got, the slower I remember I did one episode with Rosalie Miller, who's now in the band Half Happy. So we were presenting together and I felt so relaxed and I trained myself. Oh yeah, this is just loose. This is just like chill.
The stakes are low. I've done this. I've been around the block.
And last time I was presenting, I was like this. And we come from an ad break and I'm like, oh yeah, that's really good. Oh, welcome back to The Crunch. So coming up on the show. And I was so relaxed that Dan came out, the producer, my ex-boss, and he came out and he went, yeah, it's really nice, really relaxed. Let's just turn the energy up a little bit because I felt I had to go so relaxed that I was so like, yeah, this is my living room. It became like unmotivated. And I remember this. There was, I think it was Nick Knowles who spoke about this, about radio. And when people think about energy, they think about volume. And his on the radio, one of their phrases is, darling, energy not volume, energy not volume. So people think they've got to be louder. They've just got to be more into the words they're saying. And I think it's not about being, it's energy, not pace. So if I'm speaking to you like this, and I just kind of slow it down to a level where I'm now speaking to you like this, you can still have loads of colour and flavour in your words, but it's just at a slower pace. But if you just slow it down and all of a sudden it's just like this, it kind of does sound a bit monotone.
Loses a little bit of that energy, doesn't it? So something you said that was interesting there about being kind of relaxed and louche. Louche, I love that word, was that I want to pick up on is that was about how you feel. And this is a big thing that people don't think about. They don't think about their audience. So the wanting to get it over with, wanting to rattle through, is thinking about you. Wanting to, hey, I've done this 10 times or whatever, it's about you. The number one thing that will help you to stop rushing is thinking, if I was that audience member, what would I be getting right now? Would I be hearing this clearly? Would I be able to take this in? Remember, it's a lot of the stuff that you're talking about is the first time anyone's ever heard it. So it might be your elevator pitch. You've heard it a million times. But if you rattle through it, saying, you know, hi there, I'm Charlotte Lewis. I'm a public speaking coach and I help my clients to look, sound and feel more natural. Like I'm just rattling through. It's imbued with how I feel about it rather than how I'd like the audience to receive it or how they might need to receive it. Like they've heard it for the first time. It needs to be a little bit slower. So it's really interesting that you pick up on the fact that, you know, Dan in the viewing room was like, yeah, we need to turn up the energy a little bit, because for the audience member, they can misconstrue that as apathy.
Mm-hmm.
And rushing is the same thing. They feel like, oh, I've got to look after this person, because we mirror each other's breaths. When someone's speaking, we tune into the way they breathe. So if someone's really rushing, yeah, hi guys, like, suddenly we feel quite antsy, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's also, I would say the biggest reason for all of this is because it's for your audience. It's to take care of your audience. So to ensure that you have a good awareness of how your audience might be taking it in, record yourself, listen to it back, actually put yourself in the audience's shoes and think, am I going a little bit too fast? If you're picking up on the fact of like, oh, I didn't quite hear what I said there, especially leave a little bit of distance between the time you record it, come back to it in a week's time, listen to it back, and it'll feel really strange because your brain by that point will have, you know, forgotten what the time and space was that you were in and all of that sort of stuff. So you'll be quite objective. Listen to it back and think, am I getting all of the points? Am I hearing it? Am I logging what I'm saying? Is it going in, or am I just kind of rushing through? If you are rushing it and you're nervous or any of those other things that you pick up on, look at the techniques you can work with to work against the rushing. So if you're rushing, find slow techniques. If you're too slow, find energetic techniques. Like there's kind of the yin and yang of the balancing act there, isn't there?
I'd probably say something quite similar, which is record yourself and watch yourself back. That's how I learned that I was going too quickly. When you're in it, it's really hard to know if you're going too quickly or not. I had to have my dad say to me dozens of times, slow down. So it does take a long time, unfortunately. It did for me. Maybe for some people it's more natural.
It does take a long time if you just try to mind over matter it. That's what you did, is just think yourself out of rushing, which is the hardest way of doing it.
One practical thing I think, which is quite nice, if you are thinking you are rushing, is you can get loads of auto cue apps now on your phone or laptop and slow down the pace on how quickly the auto cue is moving. Slow it down to a pace where you think that's really slow, and just do your speech or your script or your talk or even your, I don't know, you talk to your boss or whatever it may be, and try it out in that pace.
And savor it.
And just feel it and see what that feels like. Another thing I wanted to bring into it, and then I know this is kind of drawing back to anecdotes, but I've noticed as well on certain apps, you have a limit as to how much you can speak for on the voice notes. Like there's a minute limit on some of them. I think it's Instagram. And so we try and rattle through everything, and then people in the last 10 seconds go, oh my God, I've only got a minute left. And then it finishes. Just say less. Or do multiple messages.
Yeah.
I remember once one of my first jobs was to be to scroll the auto cue for Cardiff TV. That was the first thing I did in a live setting. So my job was to pace the script going up, and I would normally take the cues from the presenters, I would just keep up with them. But on this one particular evening, I'd had a large cappuccino and a slice of coffee cake. And I'm very, very, very caffeine sensitive. So I was scrolling through, and he had to say to me in the break, Luke, can you slow down the auto cue a bit? Because it was a bit like, the credits are all like, hello and welcome to the Crunch. You come into us very, very own city channel. I'm in Cardiff. The next show is coming through the live special guests. And I was just like...
You were like a teleprompter DJ.
I was like a teleprompter DJ. Alternatively, one day I switched off and I was just like, just not paying attention. And we went to the newsroom and we had Dan Wilson, who now works for LBC, I think, or ITV. No, Capital, I can't remember. One of those. And he turned and he went, and today's top story. And I was just there, and I just had to like scroll the story and he like didn't know what the story was.
And today's top story. Longest pause.
All 4 of our viewers were waited with bated breath to see what it was. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if you're rushing, don't worry about it. Record yourself, and if you are rushing, just try and enjoy it more.
Savour.
Yeah. I don't know why I went high then.
Yeah. Just try and enjoy it more.